anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And it doesn't matter how big or how little it is. If you decide you want to do it, you can do it.
Hello and welcome to Practical Personal Finance, where you get the information you need to understand and succeed with money. I'm Andrew Scheer, and today I'll be joined by Cam Gully for a debt-free story. Cam is a self-employed CPA from Eastland, Texas. He received his education at Abilene Christian University and has over 3 decades of experience in his field. Cam specializes in audits for school districts and cities in Texas, and in his spare time, he enjoys hanging out with his family and flying airplanes. And now, without any further delay, here's my conversation with Cam Gully. Cam, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your debt-free story. Tell me about how much you paid off.
Well, when we first started thinking about it, it was about $765,000 was what our balance was when I began thinking about how are we going to pay all this off. And we didn't really begin the debt-free journey until about a year after that. So the debt-free journey began really at the beginning of 2016, kind of after watching some Dave Ramsey videos thinking, that sounds kind of cool. And so when we actually began the plan that we kind of started our 5-year journey on, it was at the beginning of that year, and we'd paid down, roughly $165,000 on those loans, and it was right at $600,000 when we really began focusing on getting it eliminated.
So how long did it take you from when you first got started and focused to when you finally became debt-free?
58 months.
Tell me about the different kinds of debts that you had.
Well, we had 5, none of them credit card, none of them student loans. Our house was the biggest, and that was the last one that paid off in October of 2020. We had 2 car loans, my wife's vehicle and mine. We had a loan on our airplane, and then we had 1 real estate loan that we have on the property that we own as well. So there were 5 in total.
Wow. What was it that set this whole process in motion for you?
That was kind of an epiphany sort of a moment. My wife doesn't work outside the home. She hasn't for a long time. And I've always been fearful what happens to her and us if something happens to me. Not necessarily by death. Worse, in our case, would be if I got debilitated in some way and couldn't do what I do. And so that was the real fear, is what would we do with the amount of our debt service if we couldn't bring in the amount of income that I bring in. And so that really kind of got my attention shortly after we acquired all that debt, because a lot of it came on at one time. The real estate loan, the airplane loan, we refinanced the house to buy part of the real estate. And so our debt balance increased significantly really fast, and it was shortly thereafter I kind of had buyer's remorse and thought, oh my gosh, what happens if? And so that's what the story was to get us started.
Tell me more about how you did it. Did you sell something big, or did you cash flow it all?
Well, we just cash flowed every bit of it. Our monthly minimum debt service on all those 5 loans was just south of $7,500 a month. And so we just kind of did the debt snowball. As they kind of matured and paid off, we would just add the balance to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, with a few balloon payments throughout the process.
Cash flowing $600,000 worth of debt over 5 years is no small feat. What do you do for a living? And how much do you typically earn in a year?
I'm a CPA, and I'm self-employed. We do school audits and city audits primarily. Don't do any tax work. And when I began specializing in this field, I could see how ripe it was for the taking, because there just weren't many firms or accountants out there that did this type of work. And when it really began taking off, really began taking off revenue-wise was about the time that we began this journey. I started in 2016 making about $425,000 a year, which sounds like a whole lot of money until you look at what we make now. And our revenue growth has just mushroomed from that point in time forward to today, and now that we're making over $1 million a year. In 2021, we'll definitely make well over $1 million, and it's just because of our specialization that we're in.
Did you pause your retirement contributions while you were paying off debt?
Well, and that's kind of one of those things that you kind of have to look at your own situation when you're paying off debt. No one program fits everybody. And so you have to look at yourself uniquely from where you stand as to what you want to do, where you're at. Our debt load was significant, but for our revenue stream, it wasn't exorbitant. And so I feel really strongly about saving for retirement, and just did not feel that cutting off our retirement contributions and cutting off our savings contributions solely at the expense of paying off debt was in the best interest of us, because I could see the opportunity cost lost. And in our case, over that 5-year term, our investment portfolio, as well as the contributions made, increased by about $1.5 million, which is, had we stopped and used our savings that we had in place to pay off the debt in one fell swoop, of which we could have done, we would have lost an enormous opportunity for the investment growth that we've seen over those past 5 years.
Did you cut up your credit cards?
No, we still use credit cards. We've used credit cards throughout. We've never had a problem with credit cards. We're pretty focused on what we spend money on, and we're really not extravagant people by any means. But we've never stopped using credit cards. We've never carried a balance. Honestly, I don't even have a debit card. And I intentionally do not have a debit card because I have had some really close friends who have gotten in trouble with their debit cards being compromised. Not in trouble for them per se, except they lost access to their cash in their bank accounts for a number of days until they got it all cleared up. And one friend just recently, just within the last couple of months, that happened to him, and it was about $40,000 or $50,000 he was not able to get access to, and that was his business checking account, and he had payroll and employees to pay, and that was a pretty stressful time for him for about 3 or 4 days.
What would you say has been the most challenging part of paying off all your debts?
Focus, consistency, and sticking with it, because that's truly the key. You'll see, because I sent you my worksheet, I paused for 2 months after we paid off our real estate loans where we just had remaining our house. And so for 2 months, I just I'm just going to take a break. And I did. And it was a very hard, conscious decision to go back and to re-add that additional principal to our regular monthly house payment to keep that process going, because I was tired. I really was. I was tired of making all those extra payments.
What would you say is the key to becoming debt-free?
The key is developing a plan. That's probably the biggest and most important thing of all, is develop a strategy for yourself, whether it is to cut up your credit cards, whether it is to do the debt snowball, whether it is to not contribute to retirement anymore and to put everything that you can towards the debt, or whatever your plan might be. Develop a plan that fits for you and stick to it. And don't be discouraged when it doesn't go exactly according to plan, because very rarely does everything go exactly according to plan. COVID last year, 2020, kind of threw a snowball and a curveball into everybody's plans for a time. And in our case, even, I kind of had a thought of, should we continue to be doing this? Should we not be hoarding all this cash that we're putting towards the house until we really know what this is going to turn out like. But in our case, we continued to stick with it anyway and just hoped for the best, and things turned out okay. But yeah, absolutely make a plan, because if you don't make a plan and you don't put a target out there, you'll hit what you don't make a target for every time, which is missing it altogether.
I love that saying. So how does it feel to be out from under the burden of all those debts?
Well, it's really liberating because you just don't have the constant thought of I have to have this much money in the account for this month to make this debt service payment, whatever that might be, whether it's $500, $1,000, however much that is. It's so liberating because your money is your own and you're not having to service anybody else except for yourself. And so it is so freeing to have that feeling.
Are you doing anything special to celebrate?
Well, like I said, we paid our last house payment on my birthday back in October. And I really didn't think about much. I mean, my wife and I, that was a really big deal for the two of us. We've got 3 kids, or Deb still 2 now, that live nearby. And at the time, our youngest was still living at home. And so he and our two of our older children and their spouses went and ate dinner with us. And at dinner, I told them, I said, it's kind of a big day. It's not just my birthday, but we paid our house off today. And Heath, our youngest, who is 19, he's a freshman in college, he realized and recognized how big of a deal that was. And, for him, we really didn't. The others I knew would, because they're grown and have their own houses and everything. But we didn't expect Heath to be able to recognize the importance of that. And I think he was the most excited of everybody, which was really kind of fun and exciting.
That's awesome. Last but not least, is there any advice you would give others who are working toward becoming debt-free themselves?
Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. And it doesn't matter how big or how little it is. If you decide you want to do it, you can do it. But you've got to make a plan. If you've got to formulate a plan, and really you've got to document that plan, because if you just have it in your mind and you don't put it in a position that you see it and live it and breathe it, you're probably not going to make that plan come to fruition the way you intend to. Right here on my desk, I still have our Excel spreadsheet clipped to my lampstand. We've been done with this for 6 months now, and that's a constant reminder, don't go there again. And so I think it's really important for us anyway, to have a visual to say, here's where we're going and here's how we're getting there. And I think those that pay off $30,000 and $40,000 and have a $50,000 a year salary are a whole lot more impressive than what we've done. Because it's a bigger sacrifice. In our case, it was a sacrifice, but it wasn't a huge financial sacrifice. We were able to do it because we had a really big shovel. And a lot of people don't have a really big shovel, and they're still able to do it because of the dedication and the focus. And that's truly the most important part of it all.
I'd like to thank my friend Cam Gully for taking the time to share his debt-free story. Hopefully you found it inspiring. One thing Cam mentioned that I'd like to highlight is the importance of having a clearly defined goal, which includes a time component, and then developing a plan that will allow you to achieve that goal. Have you recently become debt-free? Would you like to share your story and inspire others? Leave a comment down below or shoot me a message on Instagram. If you enjoyed Cam's debt-free story, maybe you'll enjoy John's. Click right here to learn how he paid off over $100,000, including his student loans, credit cards, car, and even his braces. And if you'd like to show your support for my channel, click right here to become a subscriber. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Andrew Scheer, and I'll see you next time.